Join. Hello, good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, good morning. I think we're live.
Are we? How do we ever know? I wonder.
You say that every time. If
Do
you
I?
look in the screen at that side, I guess it's the top
No,
left,
no.
it says
I'm,
live.
I'm not going to rely on a computer or a device to tell me if I'm live. Trust me. It's like the irony of, you have to go through certain steps to get into this thing, and it asks you if you're a robot or not. So it's a machine asking you, are you human or robot? It tells me I'm live. I don't really rely upon it. I know I'm live, even though it says we're live. But anyway, here we are.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we have a couple people joining us. So hello, everyone. And those who are watching live and those who are in the replay, welcome to Mondays with Tara and André.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is us. Here we are.
This is us. So we'd love for you to say hello in the chat and tell us where you're joining us from, if you'd like. Also lets us know that we are truly live, because I know André was questioning it at the beginning.
Does it sound almost paranoid?
And so I see someone has said hello, but that's a good reminder because it says Facebook user, that if you haven't given StreamYard permission to see your name, that we won't see it until after the broadcast, which is totally cool. But if you do want us to see your name, then make sure you go to streamyard.com/Facebook and give permission.
Mm-hmm. So,
Anywho,
hang on a second. So you go to StreamYard,
mm-hmm.
and you type in, like, there's going to be, like, for somebody like me who's not that inclined, how do you go about actually doing the steps? I want to know so people can actually do it. If you're like me, so I go to StreamYard, and then what happens?
You go StreamYard, you type in in the URL line in your browser, StreamYard.com, and then / and Facebook. And then there'll be a button there that says, I give StreamYard permission to see my Facebook name.
Right. Okay. But then also some people might decide that they want to be anonymous for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we'll see it when we go back into Facebook yesterday. It's just because we're using a different thing to broadcast from. So we can, which is a good segue, André, as you're so good at segues, into the fact that we are also broadcasting live from our YouTube channel today.
Indeed we are.
So
yeah, go on.
What were you going to say?
Well, it's like looking at a tree, and then I look up. I guess I'm kind of like a squirrel in some sense. I look at the tree and I figure out which branch I want to go to, but then there's another branch. And I think, oh, that's cool, so I want to go there. So we're talking about giving permission to use our name, but then it made me think about the thing that we were talking about not long ago. When do we want to be anonymous, and when do we want to come out and say whatever it is that we're saying, whether we're queer, whether we're polyamorous, whether we are Democrat, Republican, orange, blue, whatever it might be. And I'm on the fence about it because, part of me wants to invite participation. And for many people, they are in circumstances where they're not wanting it to be known by everybody, whoever that everybody might be. And then there's also part of me as a sex positive psychotherapist that wants to help normalize everything and say, well, if we all come out of our shadows, if we all come out of our caves and we just say, well, this is who I am, and then what? Could we all stand together? So I'm kind of like on those two different branches. I'm in that fork of the road where I want to have both, and yet I believe in the reasons of both, and think it would be good if we were able to be one way or the other. So that's sure. So
that's your thought for the day. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. I wasn't going to mention it today, but we can say it because I did post something in the group last week that we are going to enable the feature in Facebook that allows people to ask a question anonymously. Because for some people, they aren't totally out or not wanting to be out. And or are concerned about judgment and that sort of thing around, asking questions, because some of the groups, I'll admit I've seen them. People will ask an innocent question, believing it to be innocent, and then get pummeled on. So we don't want that to happen in our space. So we are going to enable that feature. So that's to come. But I think we should get on with today's topic.
Let's do it.
But I did want to say about the YouTube before we jumped in, that if you are joining us from YouTube, welcome. All of our content lives in our Facebook group. So there's a link in the description that will allow you to request to join that free group. So we hope people will do that. So
awesome.
All right.
So before we actually get into the subject of today, we're going to talk also about some events that are coming up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's no coincidence that the next 3 weeks we're going to be talking about dating, because we actually have our next speed dating event planned for May 26th. So we'll make
Yes.
sure we drop that link as well in the comments, but it is in the featured section. So it's May 26th. The last one was super fun. And yeah.
Yeah, it was
And
super fun. I'm still getting people telling me how they arrived at it and they were expecting one thing and got something else, and that a couple of people actually made some connections virtually, but also a couple made some connections that they're meeting in real life, in person, which is freaking awesome too.
yeah,
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 so
it's
pretty cool.
awesome. It was so much fun. So we're
It
excited to
was.
do that again. So the registration page is up for that. And then we have a couple of other things that are coming up that we don't have the registration pages up yet, but you can go. I posted, I think, yesterday and a few times, and it's in the featured as well, a link to a page where you can like check off some of the events that you're interested in. And then as soon as we have those pages up, you'll get an email with the information on how to sign up. So you'll be the first to know. So one of them is we finally finalized our registration for the Toronto Pride Parade. So we're
Yes.
going to be a walking float. So that's June
Well,
26th. So
walking and rolling. If you want to do your
walking and
roller,
rolling. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's going to be super fun. I'm going to get a page up on that this week.
Yeah.
But we'll have a whole little event around it, probably a meetup at my place since I'm right in the village. And then we'll go together to where we walk. And so, yeah, it's super exciting. I know somebody's asking us to post the link to the website to get onto StreamYard. Unfortunately, I can't do it in here. One of us would have had to been on our phone. We should make sure we do that next time and make sure we put it in the post. But it's StreamYard, like StreamYard as one word.com, and then /Facebook. So that's Toronto Pride Parade. We're also working on our Creating Your Pleasure and Passion Toy Box virtual workshop. So that's going to be fun, hands-on workshop. And then we are in talks, this is super exciting, with 2 clubs, one in Montreal and one in Toronto. So Club L in Montreal and Oasis Aqua Lounge in Toronto, to have special VIP nights that we'll be hosting.
Yeah, both clubs are fantastic. We've been to a few clubs in a couple of different countries now, and these are 2 of the best clubs, I would say. I like the way that they, their format, how they come about doing it, good people, fantastic time. So yeah, that'll be quite exciting, quite interesting.
Yeah. Oh, there's the link. Maybe that'll help someone who was looking for it. Yeah. So I guess we should get on to today's topic.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So for the next 3 weeks, starting this week, we're going to do a series on dating and being consensually non-monogamous.
Right.
So dating and meeting people. And I mean, the inspiration, part of the inspiration was because we have our speed dating event, but also because it's a common thing that comes up when people are, first opening up or decide they're going to be officially non-monogamous. So that was like us, right? When we started.
Yeah. It's amazing. I went out for dinner with a girlfriend of mine last night, and we were talking about somebody that she sees rather regularly. And I guess I would describe her as being solo poly. And the person that she was speaking with, they're more, well, I think the other person might see somebody as well, but they're kind of like a little bit of an item at times. And they were talking about the possibility.
What do you mean? Sorry, what do you mean by an item at times?
Well, they get together.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like closed in a sense, from what I could understand.
Oh, I see.
So it's like one-on-one. Even though they might date separately as well, they have a little affinity for each other. And they were talking about the idea of possibly inviting somebody else or going to a club or something. And she's, rather well versed in this area. And she was saying, well, maybe we should talk about it a little bit first as to what's going to go on, what our expectations are, what might be some of our concerns. Would we like to have any hard boundaries? Are there any rules? Things of that nature. And she told me that he seemed a little bit reluctant to have this conversation. So she wasn't pressing it, and it wasn't necessary. It wasn't imminent that they go. But then a little while later, she found out that he did go into a foursome with somebody else. And she asked, well, how was it? And he said, well, it didn't really quite work out, the way I was hoping. And he said, well, did you talk about it before? Did you get things, the expectations, all these things? He goes, no, not really. And she said, well, maybe maybe it's an opportunity that we do talk about these things. So that goes back to our first tenet, really, is the idea that we communicate, right? So many people who are coming into this think, wow, like, I'm going to be open, I'm going to have so much sex, and you might, but it's so much more than just about the sex. It's about communication. It's about the relationships, how we relate to each other, right? So
Yeah.
Let's find a way to have these dialogues so we can avoid some of the hardship.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a little bit why we're doing this, is like, today we're going to, the questions that we asked when we started, I don't know if we formally asked it, but we did, I think the three main questions are like, where do you start? Then how do you make it work? And I think that speaks to what you were just talking about, like what kinds of things do you want to arrange? And we're going to talk about that next week. And then where do you find people? That sort of thing. So since this is the first in the series, we're going to start at the beginning with where do I start?
Yeah, looking back, I think we kind of lucked out in a sense, right? That we were both rather articulate and able to speak openly about the things we were wanting. But I don't know that I necessarily went into it with my eyes open. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think we would have been better served had we had more of a dialogue and had the heads up, if we would have had some insight or foresight as to what might be coming down the pike. We kind of, from my part, I'll speak from my part. I was not wanting to get into that relationship escalator. And you seemed like you were okay. We would just started dating, and I didn't have the impression that you were just trying to put a lasso around me and reel me in, which I found out later was in fact the exact thing that you were doing.
That's not true.
You little weasel. No, but seriously, I'll say the story if you don't mind, and I'm sorry for people who've heard it, and they probably heard it too many times. But we were newly dating, and we were going at it. We were doing something pretty hot and heavy, rather complicated. And I said to you, in this particular position, it would be good if we had another set of hands. And you said, yeah, that would be great. And I was a little bit taken back, and I said, well, if you're serious. So we finished what we were doing, and then we jumped out of bed and we went right to it, and we launched into it, trying to find what in hindsight was in fact a unicorn, which was unbeknownst. So we were looking for a woman to join us in a threesome. How not typical of us, being sarcastic there. But anyway, the point is, we went into that and we went through a whole bunch of things, and I think we lucked out because we did find some lovely people, but there were also some things that we did, I think, were a little bit on the kind of faux pas side, or things that we could have done differently, which would have made their experience and our experience a little bit easier. But we were lucky. And there are many people who unfortunately are not so lucky. They don't necessarily have that comfort level of communication, or they have the idea of what it is they're wanting and not wanting. And we can help dispel some of that. We can shed some light on that.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think we totally just jumped right in, not really knowing, and kind of had our bit, like you said, like little fumbles along the way. But we learned along the way. And I think, I'm going to give you credit for this, André, because you're very good at talking. And it was a new thing for me experiencing that. And I think the reason, like you said, we were successful was because we continued to talk along the way as things came up, as we had like the big feels, and I'm sure people that are watching this are either have experienced that or are right in smack dab in the middle of it. And it can be really painful, especially I think because we started together at once, and that's mostly how our relationship was. I think we had a slightly easier path. I think when people are opening up a pre-existing relationship that is monogamous, I think that's where it's really, really important to really do some of this planning and thinking and, having a good start as a base.
Absolutely. Yeah. Having good channels of communication, right? Because you already have this transference, this idea of who you are in this, who they are, how we are together. There's a lot of history to it. And we have that. I'm working with a couple right now, and very often the ideas come up that they would be willing to announce their position and share their position, but they don't want to hurt the other person. They don't want the other person's ego getting affected. But then what's the alternative? That we not say it, and then we just leave it unsaid, and then egos get hurt, or there's miscommunication, misinterpretations. But when we talk about it before it happens, we can gauge how we feel about it, how the other person feels about it, how we're going to interact with it. We can have eyes open. We can manage expectations. We can say what we're comfortable with and not comfortable with as of yet. And it makes a world of difference. It really does. So,
yeah, I'd like to say that we're meaning makers. So we will often choose the meaning of it in any circumstance that it's often not the meaning that serves us. So I think that's what happens along the way. There's feelings of jealousy and that sort of thing. And yeah, so exactly. So, I mean, looking back, we could have done things differently, but I think, we are where we are, and, we can now share what we've learned. So I think when starting off, if you're just starting, or if you're kind of in the middle of the fields, it might be good to go back to the beginning and start with some questions and ask yourself some things.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So I was going to say the first question is really, especially if you're new, what makes me want to be consensually non-monogamous? And I don't really want to go into big detail on this because we did two different lives on this, and it's a big topic, but I think it's important before you jump in as to really understanding what is it I'm really wanting to get out of this? Like what makes me polyamorous or open or want to be a swinger? Like what is it? How is it serving me?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because unfortunately, I think I've seen too many people come into it and they're having some issue with their relationship and they think, well, if we open up or we do this, that's going to fix that. And I don't think that that's actually the cure. In fact, it might sometimes really exacerbate some of those issues that they're having, right?
Yeah, and definitely I've talked to people where it has been one partner that wanted to do it, and then the other partner agrees to it, thinking it's the only way to keep the relationship together, and now is in the moment of not sure what to do about that.
Right.
Or they both, or sorry, what were you going to say?
No, go on.
Or they both want to do it, and they're like, yeah, this makes total sense. We want to explore all these things, but they still are having the feels, and they are trying to convince themselves, why am I feeling this way? I know this is the right thing. I want my partner to be happy and that sort of thing. And, I'm working with a client right now where that's exactly the case, is like they're trying to understand the roots of where their feelings are and then move to a place where they feel secure and happy and better about things that are going on. So
yeah, and I think this is the foundation from which we launch. So if we can become informed as to what our motives are, why are we looking to this, when are we doing it, what's going on is making it a possibility now as opposed to 6 months from now or 6 months before. What's at play. Really, let's try and unpack as much of this as possible. And the idea also, you talk about how one partner might want it more than the other. Well, let's say I'm the one who wants it more. Do I feel guilty? Are there implications that I'm not satisfied? Or, there's a whole bunch of things, and they may not necessarily be what we imagine them to be initially. But again, at the risk of sounding redundant, we find out by communicating about it and being willing to be open and honest about it. And even though we think that, there's a danger that the person's ego might be hurt or that they might, take this wrong way, I think it's better that we announce it before it happens and we deal with those feelings or thoughts or concerns that come up prior to it, rather than just jumping into it and then trying to, adjust what's going on there.
Yeah, I'm talking to someone in the group who's been struggling a bit. We've been having a chat. We're trying to arrange a call, but in their situation, the husband, they're feeling very intense feelings of jealousy, and the husband's like, well, we agreed to do this and you've got to deal with your things. And I don't want to get into that, but I get that we have to deal with our things for sure. There's a lot of inner work to do, but there's also some work to do if we're in a partnership with someone. And I think that's why this step is important, whether you're solo or a couple, to figuring it out. So, so the first question.
But Tara, hang on. One thing that I've got to say that's very, very important.
Okay.
What brought up, the thought for that was that even though we made an agreement to do this, at any time, any one of us is within our rights to change our mind. It's all about consent, right? It's all about security. So yes, we agreed to do this and you've changed your mind. That's it. There's no come on, baby, or you promised me, or any of this. There's no coercion in this. There's no blackmailing. There's none of this. It has to really come from a place of love, right? So at any point, you can, I can, they can decide that they want to retract their consent. Consent is always an ongoing thing. We have to always check in the moment, is this still good for you? And if it's not, we're well within our rights to bring that back, because that creates that sense of security. I feel secure that if I change my mind, you'll still be able to be with me in that change.
100% agreed.
That's all I want to say.
100% agreed. Consent, our other favorite topic. Okay, so the first question to ask yourself, I mean, we said the first question is why I want to be consensually non-monogamous, but the next one is, if you've decided and you're ready, you're ready to jump in, is why? Why do I want to date? What do I want to get out of it?
So what are some of the common things that you see with the people you work with as to why they might want to become open relating, swingers, polyamorous, whatever you want to call it? What's their...
Well, there's a myriad of experiences, right? And I think that's why it's important to know for yourself, but also if you're in a partnership or starting off from a position where you're in a partnership that's opening up, is understanding where you want to come, what do you want to get out of it? What do you want? Why are you doing it? And then the other person as well. So for some people, they just want to have casual sex with people, be open to having different sexual experiences. So that's kind of the more basic level. And sometimes it may be something that you want to do together, or you want to do like in a swinging situation, that sort of thing. So, or apart. So you just want to have casual partners that you see from time to time.
One of the things, again, another inspiration, one of the things that came to mind is that maybe I want to do it because I realize that being in a coupled relationship feels like I'm going on that relationship escalator. And it feels to me like it's my wanting to conform to this model of monogamy that I have to, or I should, or my parents and grandparents did. It's the society says I should be this way. When in fact, maybe I want to be close and maybe I want to have interaction, but I don't feel that it's exactly the right modality or philosophy for me. Maybe I want to feel as though, I'm free in my attachment style to go over here, come back over there, be with these other people, have these other experiences, feeling as though it enriches my life as opposed to having to conform to be a way that I might not feel really resonates with me. So in a sense, it kind of helps to understand that, so we could feel as though it's not pathological if we want to go in this other way. It's not simply just about sexual expression, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more about being, in a way, true to ourselves, how we feel we might relate best to having other people.
Yeah, exactly. So then some other things people want. So it might be casual. It might be something like friends with benefits. So people that you see on an ongoing basis that you have a strong friendship with, but you also have sex with them from time to time. And I think that's awesome too. And I think I've definitely got some partners where that's the case, where they're more like really good friends and sometimes we have sex. You know what I mean?
Well, and I have a friend who I love deeply, who I do not have sex with. They do not subscribe to the idea of their being polyamorous, even though they know that I am. And I still consider them to be part of my poly experience.
Yeah.
And, you are well aware of them as well, and they are a big part of it. So maybe, it's the sex is a big part of this, but it's not limited to that, right? Because there are many people who are in, I guess we'll say, the poly umbrella, who self-describe as asexual. And they're not necessarily sexually interacting, but emotionally, romantically.
Yeah, emotional. Yeah. So you might want to have committed, like multiple relationships that feel more committed and close. So like really, really strong partnership. Ooh, sirens.
The big city.
Are you in Toronto at my place?
I'm in Toronto. Are you in Montreal at my place?
Yeah, where it's quiet.
It is quiet.
Excuse me. Yeah, so some people go into it wanting multiple relationships that are kind of on the same level. So there's no hierarchy. There's no, I want to meet different people to have different experiences with. So for some people, like one of my clients, their partner is discovering their shadow self through seeing other people. So they've always had this desire to do some things that fall into the BDSM category, and so they feel it's something that they'd like to explore outside their marriage. And I mean, while they do stuff together as well, this is something they want to explore on their own.
That's not uncommon. I'm working with a couple as well that they are wanting to have some kink introduced, but they're not necessarily wanting it with their partner. And I think it's the question of really wanting to be degraded that comes in. They don't necessarily want their partner to degrade them or see them being degraded by somebody else. So they've agreed to kind of do that separately. It's just interesting, the things that we might be willing to share and we might not be willing to share. But the beauty of their relationship is that they are able to really announce their own preference and be okay with that, and their partners as well.
Yeah. And I think part of it, like even for my client, it's like, this is some of the things they have to work through in terms of talking about it, is like really getting comfortable with that it's not taking something away from them, and it's something that enriches their partner's life. And it doesn't have the meaning that it means their relationship is anything less, it's just different,
Right.
That sort of thing. So yeah, so those are kind of like, why do you want to date? So that's the type of thing you might want to really figure out. And if you are with a partner, and we're going to talk more about kind of the conversations you might want to have with your partner next week, but like, what do you want to get out of it? Like, you just may want to have some fun and do some things, and that's totally cool. It's up to you. I think, like you said, as long as everybody is consenting, I think it's fine. You know what I mean? Just making sure that there's not assumptions, because sometimes we go into things assuming people understand what we want, and sometimes we don't. No.
It's interesting to say we might want to go into it just to have a little bit more fun, which is, perfectly valid and understandable. I was speaking to somebody the other day who was saying that they are in a committed relationship and they are with somebody who they consider to be very loving, but they themselves feel as though they want even more love. And it's not so much about the sex, but they're wanting to find somebody who they could be emotionally invested with, while at the same time maintaining the good emotional relationship that they already have.
Yeah.
So it's interesting though, because often I think the model that's seen is like, well, you and I have great sex, but I also like to have sex with this other person. So we go at it and we're having all that wonderful fulfillment. But it seems less common at this moment where we say, well, I'm in a loving relationship with you and I feel emotionally valued, but I also want to go out and find that love and other value from another person. And they're equally acceptable, right? They're equally fantastic. But I think very often the announcement or the desire for the emotional part is not quite as fluid. You could go to a sex club and, well, it's just that. It's a club where you're going to have physical sexual relations. You might fall in love with somebody, but it doesn't seem yet as though there are as many love clubs where you go and, the focus is really on exchanging of that love energy. Maybe it's something that develops over time, but they're both fantastic, right? It becomes extra special when you have both components involved. But really what I'm trying to say in that long-winded way, that we can have that emotional component offered and received as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the reason I think I love being polyamorous. And I use that term for myself, even though someone might debate whether or not I'm polyamorous or not, because everybody has their own definition, right? It's funny, we were talking about this last night because I went to an event from Polyamory Montreal, which was great. And I was talking to someone and I asked, oh, does this group have like sexy events as well? And they're like, no, because they want it to be like about being multiple loves and loving relationships and not make that connection to sex, which I totally understand. But for me, my definition for myself, and I think this is what we can define, is goes beyond that. Like, I want to have, like you said, multiple loves. Like I love my friends and I love the relationships I have. And like, why can't we have all the love? And it's all different loves. So that's awesome. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay. So then the second big question is who? So we talked about why, and now we're going to talk about who. Like, who do you want to date? What kinds of people do you like? What experiences do you want to enjoy?
Yeah. Wow. It's such a big who. Yeah. Like, where do we even go? Who do I want to date? That's such an amazing question. It's like, does an image of a person, the way that they might look, come to mind? Or is it more about the characteristics of the things, the traits that they might have, the type of person that they might be, how I imagine I might be with them? It's a great question.
Yeah. And I think it can be both those things. You know what I mean? Sometimes we say, oh, maybe it's shallow to say I like somebody with brown hair. You know what I mean? And maybe that's not going to be the top of your list, but if you like brown hair, why can't you like brown hair? You know what I mean? Just
Perfect.
like if you're someone who's physically active and takes care of yourself, and that's part of your life and routine, you might want someone who that's also important to them, because then you may share other common things in terms of like the activities like that you like to do or that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So find out who it is you're wanting to date. That data will inform you as to the next steps later on as to how you go about finding them.
Yeah.
Or they
So
find you.
like, so sorry, I interrupted you, babe.
That's quite all right.
Were you done?
Yes.
So, like, what kind of people are they? So, what are their characteristics? So, we talked a bit about some physical characteristics, but what is their what kinds of gender identities are you interested in? What kind of sexual identities, and what kind of relationship identity do they have? Like these may be things that are important to you.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. You speak about the gender identity. Again, it makes me think about how fluid we are. How when I was in high school, I was a certain way, and I'm very much still that certain way. But years later, through this poly experience, I am in tune with other ways as well, and I would not have necessarily considered these ways early on in the voyage, right? So it's interesting just to be open to it and to observe where it might be. You might be reinforced into one set of things, saying like, wow, you know what? I've experienced these other things and I really like brown hair. Or you might say, you know what? I never thought I was going to like orange hair, but orange hair is like pretty interesting too. So remaining open to it, right? And seeing what feels right. Listen to your intuitive sense and see what feels right. And if it doesn't feel right, then you're under no obligation to pursue that.
Mm-hmm. But there may be things that, yeah, I agree. There may be things too that are like non-negotiables for you. Like, what kinds of things do they value? You know what I mean? If you have strong values in some area, you might want someone that has similar values in those areas.
I remember reading an article years ago that said when you go on a first date, you should not talk about politics, religion, or abortion, what at the time it was. And I wonder if, in fact, those are the very things we should be speaking about. Do we want to know who is sitting across from us? And I guess, this is a big assumption, but I would assume that being in a group like this or in this type of lifestyle, that we are primarily like-minded, but one never knows. And it'd be interesting to see what happens when we do find that difference. Is it something that we want to use as a roadblocker and say, no, I'm sorry, that's a deal breaker? Or is it something that we might say, you know what, I'm strongly invested in this position, and so are they on the other side, but where could we have this overlap? Where could we meet? Do we have the inclination to find that commonality?
Mm-hmm. But if you're wanting, say, for example, if you're wanting to move towards having like multiple committed relationships, and someone that you meet is only looking for casual connections, they may not be the person for you.
True. That's a very good point. On to that also, we were talking the other day about the idea of having dating profiles. Where do we meet these people? And somebody went and said, well, you know what? I'm done dating people who do not explicitly announce themselves to be polyamorous or open relating. We need to find a term for it. Anyway, so they want to find people who are kind of oriented towards the same thing.
Yeah, because I've talked to a lot of people too, where they get in situations and they date people who are not identifying that way. They're currently single. They're looking just to date. And they may want a committed relationship that's more the relationship escalator. So then you bring that into your reality. And if you have a very strong desire to be a certain way in terms of your consensual non-monogamy, that there may be a clash down the line.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought you were going to suggest that they may have a strong attraction towards each other and want to kind of minimize their own positions, which happens at times too, right? So on our dating profile, for example, it doesn't really say that we're into, whatever it is we're into, and we meet each other. I was going to come up with a wild example, but anyway. And so we meet each other.
I wanted the wild example.
And if we've not really announced our position or we don't ask them about it, all of a sudden we find ourselves gravitating towards this person, wanting to be connected with them. But there's a couple of things like, let's say, our relationship styles that don't really work. And maybe it's okay for the moment, but what would it look like later on? And will it be harder to announce that later on?
Mm-hmm. And then some people have really specific desires in terms of meeting or dating people that are, it's sort of related to what you said earlier, but new or experienced in consensual non-monogamy.
Right.
Because sometimes you hear it, you see it in some of the groups, and people make comments like, I don't want to train another person, which is so interesting. Because I think if someone's new to it, there can be bumps along the way. Some people are perfectly fine with meeting someone who's desirous and wants to learn and experience the things. So I think it depends on the person, but for some people, that's a hard thing for them.
Right. I'm laughing because the idea of training another person, it's like, yes, I can see it as a rather arduous task at times, perhaps, and heartbreaking for both people. But at the same time, isn't it wonderful if we have a loving teacher who's already walked through this and stumbled a couple of times and say, well, watch out, when you step there, you might step in something. So, it's a loving gift that we could give to others if you're willing to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sorry, I missed that last part.
I get the idea of, or also feeling as though it could be a burden, and not, why should I have to do the heavy lifting for other people when I've had to do it for myself?
Yeah, maybe. But for some people, it could be a great experience. Like I was talking to someone last night at the event, and they were saying that they started sort of more from the swinging side of things as a solo person. That's how they kind of got into consensual non-monogamy. And then they met their partner who was really well versed and incorporated into polyamory, had other partners and that sort of thing. And they started a relationship. And through that, they learned all kinds of amazing things. And they feel like, that they've expanded and grew because of that, which was sort of amazing. Like they were pretty appreciative of that experience. So
awesome.
So then another thing I think people also may want to consider is, do you want someone who has other partners already? So nesting or otherwise.
Right.
So for me personally, I find it easier to date people that already have other relationships.
What makes that easier? What is it about that?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I think it's because I feel there's less pressure for the relationship to go in a certain direction, and you have common things in terms of how you divide your time and what's important and that sort of thing. And I think it just makes a lot of those things easier. And what about you?
Well, I'm grooving to what you said. In some ways, it makes it easier. I'm thinking about a couple I know, and they're only wanting to date other poly couples that have children as well, because they get it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, they understand if I have to cancel the last minute because the sitter didn't show or whatever it is, they speak each other's language. But unfortunately, now you're dealing not only with possibly 4 schedules, but the kids and the babysitter and all of a sudden, so it can get problematic. So maybe having a solo person come into that make it a little bit easier on a superficial level, on a scheduling level. But there's this idea of the mindset, we both are dog people, we get it. We're both cat people, we get it. We're both cat and dog people, we get it. There's like speaking to people that we resonate with and who will get us as well.
Yeah, the scheduling thing's a big thing. Like that's another thing. Like when people come in the group, I'm the person that looks at the questions. And then one of the other common things that people struggle with is scheduling. And I have to admit, it's like tough. Like I'm here in Montreal by myself, and I had this idea that I was going to see someone I had seen a couple of times, but they've been traveling. I've not been here. They have a family here. I've got other commitments. And it's so like, we ended up having to have a date, like kind of like midday, like late afternoon, 3 to 6, because it fit in a very small window in both of our commitments. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, that's the benefit of being, a digital nomad and creating your own schedules, that you could do that. But then if you're not, and you work a regular 9-to-5 job, sometimes it's hard to do those things.
Yeah, work. But then it makes me think also the idea of, we come into this and you think, wow, like look at the abundance of people who are wanting to meet me and I'm wanting to meet. And then we can become polysaturated, right?
Yes.
So then there's the scheduling, like, yes, I love you and I love you and I love you and I want to see all you people. Oh no, like when are we gonna meet each other? When is it going to facilitate itself, or how can we help facilitate it? And unfortunately, the reality of life is that there are only so many hours in a day. But there is a great solution, and it's called orgies.
I thought that's so hilarious. That was your answer. I was going to say scheduling or like a calendar
Yeah,
or.
no. No, I just figured bring them all together at one time, and there you all your
That
friends.
is a great solution. That's a great solution. So, just to recap today, we talked about, starting at the beginning. So first of all, obviously, understanding what makes you want to be consensually non-monogamous, what's the model you want to follow, and then go into the two big questions of why you want to date and what you'd like to get out of it. And then we just talked about the who do you want to date, what kinds of people, and that sort of thing, and really understanding what those things are. And in terms of the who, the one thing I do with a lot of my clients as part of our work together is we do a relationship visualization. And that's about kind of imagining what it would be like. And you could do this yourself. And they actually draw out the kinds of partners that they would like to have and the type of relationships. And I think it's really helpful to be able to, understand and see what it is so that you recognize it when it comes to you.
That is step one of the cure, right? The 4 steps of the cure: knowing what it is you're wanting, finding a way of getting it, and being happy having it. And for many people, the hardest part is knowing what they're wanting. But being able to make that relationship, what did you call it? A profile?
No. Visualization.
I think it's a fantastic idea. Yeah, let's see if we can put as many points down as possible and help shape who we are wanting to attract. But I wonder if we might even do it in a self-reflective way. Who am I? What am I wanting to offer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's the big question. I think sometimes we often look, like you said, at like, what is it that I want, but what can I offer in a relationship? That's a great point. We should add that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I see that in a lot of dating profiles, right? I'm looking for this, and I'm looking for that, and I'm looking for this. It's wonderful that you let it be known, but who are you, and why should we want to know you? Well, because I am loving, I am funny, I'm smart, whatever it is. And, let's be able to identify the components in ourselves as well as what we're looking for in others. And then it helps in the dialogue, right? Helps in the communication. It's all about communication.
All about communication. Okay. So if you decide that you want to date and figure this out, how better than to do this at an event where you can meet a variety of people who are also consensually non-monogamous. So not an orgy. We're not planning that one yet, but we are having our May 26th online speed dating and polyamory event.
This was on a Thursday, I see.
Yeah, we're doing it on Thursday this time because we thought we would try a weeknight, because I think sometimes Fridays Fridays and Saturdays can be busy for people with other commitments. So Thursday night, Baby Friday, is kind of fun. Yeah, so we're going to get you a chance to meet other people, because maybe you don't know what it is you want. And, it's just kind of cool to meet people that do things differently than you do, especially if you're new, right?
Not knowing is perfectly acceptable as well, right? And you just come into it with an open heart as much as you can and see, being open to things like chicken feet.
Yeah, awesome. Chicken feet. I did try them a second time. I still don't like them.
So you tried it. So I always say try everything 3 times. So you tried it the first time, you didn't like it, and you tried it a second time, again, you did not like it. Okay.
I feel like chicken feet is the thing that I don't need to try a third time. Just saying. I don't know. Somebody else back me up here in the comments.
Well, I tried it the first time. I was not a big fan. I tried it a second time. It was delicious. So I guess I have to try it a third time.
Well, you already like it, though.
Well, I liked it the second time, not the first time. But the point is, forget about chicken feet. The idea is that we remain open, right? We come to it with hopefully as high a degree of transparency as possible, both for our sakes and for the others. And we, invite communication.
Right. Okay. So join us for speed dating, and also join us next week at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time for part 2, which is going to be how to date as a newly opened couple. So we're going to get into the specifics if you're already in a relationship and you're starting from there. So what types of agreements you might have, how you do check-ins, how do you figure it out what you want, and that sort of thing. So
some of the do's and don't do's.
Yeah, do's and don't do's. I mean, I think we're going to do a lot of the do's.
Okay, yeah, do's are better, but there are a couple of maybe don't do's that we should be willing to look at.
Yeah, in the do's, we'll talk about kind of like the why around why you do those things. So, because you don't want to end up in the don'ts.
That's true.
Anyway, or get yourself out of them quickly. So
that's also a good point. Yes, yeah, we can walk back from it.
Fantastic. Awesome. So join us here next week and sign up for speed dating and sign up for getting to know about what else is going on.
And two other things. One, get your pride costumes ready because it's a coming.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Still don't know what we're going to do. And the other thing I wanted to share with you and with the community, because it is a community thing, I went to go see my doctor for something totally unrelated to STIs, but as is the norm for you and I, every time we go see our lovely Dr. Parisha, who's having a baby, happy birthday, Dr. Parisha, having a baby, we always ask for a complete STI workup panel. And proud to say again that I came back fully normal and negative with everything. But the reason why I mention it is because it's not only about how it affects myself and my immediate partner, it's of how we are integrated into the community. So STIs exist, they're very real, but they also can be addressed with in a very loving and supportive community way. And if we ever did have anything, immediately we would kind of go into a little shutdown, address that, but also notify our partners. There's no moral aspect to it. It's not a good person or a bad person. It's very much like a cold. It's a virus that you catch, and we want to contain it. So if we know that we're sick, we don't sneeze on other people, we are wanting to stay home and take care of ourselves. So the point being, be a responsible member in this community. Please always get tested and do the responsible thing and speak about it openly and honestly.
That's your PSA for the day.
Yeah, that
I heard actually a story last night about somebody in the polyamorous community here who was not, who had tested and was not telling people about what was going on with them, and also was taking off the condom without consent and not sharing information with partners. So anyways, that was quite an interesting find out. But I think that's not a common thing. I feel like people that we've met, it's pretty good, but it's always good, I think, to remind people that it's an important part of, if you are having multiple partners, is to be, get regularly tested and keep everybody informed.
Absolutely. It's unfortunate to hear about that one person. I think something's going on there that they might want to take a look at. But, you speak about using condoms, and I'm all for condoms. That's great. But they don't protect 100% against all things. And if we're having any type of oral sex, well, it's unlikely that we are going to be using a dental dam or a condom during those things as well, which is why we need to know what we have and what the other person has. And let's go at it in a very loving and mature and open way. So we can have fun. We have a lot of fun, but let's do it in a way that's good for everyone.
All right. Well, let's have fun. And we hope you'll join us for some fun for speed dating. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk again next week.
Yay.